Okay, so as I was saying, yes, I didn't start knowing very much metric. I learned, the very basics, and then it just kind of went away. It wasn't actually until nursing school where I really was starting to understand what metric system was and how to convert using it. That being said, today is very important because from now on, you've got dosage calculation on every exam until you graduate nursing school. Pharmacology, med surg, pediatrics, OB, psych, everything has dosage calculation in it. Usually 5 questions, and by the end of the semester, you'll be like, yay, 5 free points. But right now, some of you are going to freak out because it's dosage calculation. So there are, in your Ogden book, it shows you a lot of different ways of actually doing this type of calculation. I teach dimensional analysis. I know how to do other methods, but I teach dimensional analysis. It is the easiest to understand, and it also, if you keep setting up the same way for every question, it will also make sure that you don't miss something. It will help you. If you like formulas, if you like all those other things, that's fine, but I am teaching dimensional analysis, and it is, like I said, it's something that you should learn because formulas work to a point, but when I get you into micrograms per kilogram per minute and I give you a pound patient with a certain dosage, you're going to have a hard time with the formula until you know how to control it. So dimensional analysis will help you keep everything in one spot. So let me go ahead and get the screen sharing going. How we're going to do this is, let's see. Can you all see the actual screen now? Medication dosage and calculations. Yes, perfect, perfect, perfect. Good. Now, I'm going to stop through this step by step. As you go through it, if you don't get it, it's okay, because I'm going to give everyone a chance to work on the question, and then at a certain amount of time, I'm going to go step by step through this. I have set it up in a way that is the same through most questions, so you'll have an idea of how to do this and how to practice it. So let's just jump in. Medication doses and calculations. So we are using system of medication measurements. We have to be able to compute medication doses. This is extremely important in your job, because if you do it wrong, if you throw a number off, you've killed a patient, depending on some of these drugs, or you haven't given them the right dose and it's not helping them. You have to be right, which is why when you do dosage calculation, you always check with another nurse. Check your calculations, show it. Show what you did so that way you can make sure. Like from Tylenol to Dilaudid, check it. Just make sure you didn't make a silly mistake, because you don't want to be responsible for that. So the metric system, it's 0 before the decimals only. So this is the most easily organized. It's in powers of 10. And if you haven't even introduced to this type of system, welcome. We're going to crash course it for you. Meters, liters, and grams. Everything is based on those 3 measurements in nursing school. You can go further than that, but you don't have to worry about it because those are the only 3 you have to deal with. That's your base suffix. You have to be able to change it between, say, liters and microliters, or decaliters, or let's say kilograms and pounds. We have to be able to convert things. Household system, very familiar, but it's inaccurate. So if I say a teaspoon, am I giving you a teaspoon like, what you're used to at home? Or are you going to get grandma's teaspoon, who looks half the size but twice as deep? Or teaspoons is such an inaccurate term. Tablespoon, while it's a unit of measure, is inaccurate because people will just grab the big spoon and say, look, it's a tablespoon. It's not accurate. Whereas your metric system gives you precise measures. So you need to understand that. So this is how we do this now. We use the metric system for everything because it is the most accurate way to dose medications. Americans will use anything. I had to put this in. If you haven't seen this, We'll measure with anything except the metric system. Look, it's an alligator's length. That's 6 feet for you people who need to make sure that you're 6 feet apart. Or, you know, make sure you understand your metric system. All right, metric system. The unit, gram, liter. Those are your two big ones on this. Right in the middle. This is a number line for those of you who like that in algebra. But how this works is if I say I have 1 gram of something, if I look to the left and I say, well, how many, or actually, let's start with the right. If I look to the right and say, well, that decigram, what is that? You know, that's smaller. It's 10 times smaller, right? So I say, okay, yes. So 1 gram is equal to 10 decigrams, or 100 centigrams, or 1,000 milligrams, or 1,000,000 micrograms. That is just for something. That's how this works. So whatever my number is, the number gets smaller or bigger, depending on how we go through it. This is how you'll use it for conversions, and I'll show you what I mean as we go through it. This is just a second way of looking at it. Deci is 1/110th, 1/100th, and 3 units between each one. This is a really good thing to memorize and know when you do dosage calculations. You can sit there and make your own, or you can just write down the 5. They're the easiest ones to remember. A liter is 1,000 mils. A mil is 1,000 micrograms. A kilogram is 1,000 grams. A gram, 1,000 milligrams. A milligram is 1,000 micrograms. That's how this works. That's what these numbers up on that line mean with the metric system. Anything in gold that I put in here, because I use a lot of color coding to make it a lot easier to see where I'm pulling numbers from, is a conversion factor. You'll need to know how to do this. Either know your terms or know how to move things, but I give it through dimensional analysis, which requires you to know your conversions, like the ones below. Here is your apothecary metric conversions. Commit these to memory forever. Because if you know, I'm going to go back a slide just for a second. If you know this and this, you've got half your work done for nursing school calculations. You have to know it. You have to just know these. 1 ounce is 30 mils. A teaspoon is 5 mils. A tablespoon is 15 mils. A cup is 240, and 2.2 pounds is a kilogram. Know these, know these. You know your little scratch piece of paper before the test? This is a great thing. This and these are a great thing to just write down right when you start so you don't have to worry about it. Your book has a much larger graph, but I broke it down to this because your graph goes into 1 teaspoon, 3 teaspoons, 5 tablespoons to a mil, yada, yada. I'm like, you can do that with these. You can just convert it with these. All right. Again, I will only be teaching dimensional analysis. If you know of a different way, you can, but just recognize that dimensional analysis is the way that will protect you as you get further into this, and it becomes much more complicated. So let's just start. We have an order of 100 milligrams of drug A for a patient. On hand, you have 50 milligrams per tablet of drug A. How many tablets we need to give the patient? Don't write the answer down, because I know some of you may be able to go, I got it. Well, it's not going to be as easy later. I gave you a really easy one so I can teach dimensional analysis. So I'm going to just walk through this one first. Whenever I need to know, whenever I have a dosage calculation question, always look at the question first. I need to know how many tablets I will have. So I'm going to always start with that. Start with what you want. X tablets equals. I need tablets. So once I have that on the left side of the equation, on the right side, I will start with tablets. So now you guys can answer, what do I have up in the question that deals with tablets? 50 milligrams. Good. You got to be right. You got to be right on there. 50 milligrams per tablet. So I should see 1 tablet over 50 milligrams because I can do that. Because it says X tablets right next to it, it has to match. X tablets on the left and 1 tablet on the right. It just how happens to be connected to 50 milligrams. I need the right side of the equation to match the left side of the equations in terms of suffix. So now I will begin canceling suffixes so I can actually be done with the equation before I do any math. So I have 1 tablet, but now I have a milligram on the bottom. So what do I have up in the equation that could cancel milligrams? 100 milligrams. And 100 milligrams, it just says of a drug for A, so I can just say 100 milligrams over 1 because it's 1 patient, 1 dose, whatever you want to put. But any number over the number 1 is the number itself. So 100 over 1 is the number 100. So at this point, I have 2 sets. I have done 2 types of equation. I've pulled 2 things into it. I don't calculate anything yet. I will then begin canceling what's in the first fraction and the second fraction that I can cancel. So I see a milligram on the bottom and a milligram on top. Before I go any further, now that I've canceled, what do I have left? I need tablets on the left. All I have left for suffixes is tablet on the right. So now I know I don't need anything else in the equation, and I can multiply across and divide. So 1 tablet over 50 times 100 milligrams, but I got rid of those. So I have 100 tablets over 50, which gives me 2 tablets. Yes, a very long way to do a 2-tablet question, but believe me, you're going to want to start here and just start doing dimensional analysis moving forward. So far, does this make sense? I will stop for questions constantly because this is something I need you guys to slowly grasp as we go forward. So, all right. Let's move on to the next one then. Oh, I got my happy little cloud. I love my happy little cloud when I'm right. I had a question about checking the dosage. Does it have to be checked with another? Does it have to be? Yes, anytime that you calculate a dose, you should check with an RN, a second RN. Verify medications. Hey, look, it's in red. I've said it twice for some reason. Verify another nurse to ensure accuracy. Okay, so let's do another one. I have an order of 400 milligrams. Available is 20 milligrams per 1 milliliter. How many mils do you need to fulfill this order? I will give you guys a moment to try this one with dimensional analysis. Again, some of you can do this top of your head, which is fine. It just gets a lot harder. Got to get the suffix right. The question is asking for a milliliter. Jonathan, that one underneath it is just, you can be whatever you want because it was just asking for 100 milligram per patient. So you could just put 100 over 1 and you could say patient. But I just use the number 1 because it's 100 over 1 is still 100. Okay, so I'm seeing some answers. Let's move through this together. Okay. XMLs, I need the mLs to match the first thing on top. 1 ml over 20 milligrams. I can flip it. You can flip it because all we're doing is canceling suffixes. Okay. Because it is still 1 milliliter per 20 milligrams. It's just on the available. We said 20 milligrams per 1 milliliter. It's the same thing on this. I have a milligram on the bottom, so I need to cancel it. 40 milligrams on top allows me to cancel and multiply and divide across to give me 2 mLs. Which unit to Kate? Explain. Which unit to write? What do you mean? The question is, are you asking for the answer or for each one of those fractions? They're not the right milligrams. So the question specifically asks for mils. So I will start with what the question's asking. That's what the X is, X mLs. Then whatever is the right next to the equal sign should be another ml because that's what I'm looking for. And then it gives me something to start with to begin moving. So the question up top said it has available 20 milligrams per 1 ml. I brought that down in the green and just said 1 ml per 20 milligrams. So you write the unit that does not cancel. Correct. So that's a good way of saying it. You write the unit that doesn't cancel at the beginning. What do you want? That's the first thing you should have in there, if possible. Why did we write 20 over 1? That's because that's what's available. That's what the question gave you was 20 over 1, 20 milligrams per 1 ml. We wrote 1 ml over 20 milligrams, and this did it by 40 milligrams. And we'll just keep going we're going to keep going with this. The order states 500 milligrams PO daily. It's available at 250 milligrams. How many tablets will you administer? Again, you can probably do this on the top of your head, but this is specifically easy so you could learn your dimensional analysis steps before we go into it. Okay. So, how many tablets? Place an X. X tablets is 1 tablet per 250 milligrams because it says available 250 milligram tablets. So that tells me 1 tablet per 250 milligrams. I then have the 500 milligrams to work with. And again, I put it over the number 1 because 500 over 1 is just the number 500. Which allows me to cancel the milligrams. All I have left on the right side of the equation after I cancel the suffixes is the tablet. So I'm done pulling from the equation. I multiply across and then divide. Can we write tabs? This is a really good question, Kate. For the tests, if you write the word tabs, milliliters, milligrams, milliliters per hour, yada yada, if you write anything but the number, you're wrong. And I will explain that to you at the end of this. But as a quick heads up, write the number only. If you write the unit of measure, it's wrong because you're not following the order given, which is to only write the number, which is what we do for every single question. And yes, for calculations, you will have a calculator. You will not get to bring yours. You have one attached to your testing software. Elaborate. So Rebecca, let's say I did this question here and gave it to you on an exam. If you wrote 2 tablets, you would be wrong. Because according to every time you get a dosage calculation question, we give you rules right above it. You don't have to memorize them. They're there for you. And they say specifically, do not write anything but the number. If you cannot follow that order, that tells us you can't follow a provider order. And the major order is only write numbers. From here to eternity in nursing school, only write numbers. Yeah, so for this one, I'm giving you the steps on how to do it, including those. But whenever you have the actual exam software, it will specifically give you how to round, how to do everything. And it says, do not write anything but a number on there. If you try and do it, it tells us you didn't read the order appropriately. And we want to make sure you're on that. All right. Let's do another one. 100 milligrams of Tylenol tab PO, available as 25 milligram tabs. How will you administer it? Go ahead and start. So far, we're getting pretty well with this, but let's start with it. So how many tabs? I'm going to start with X tabs, and I have it up there, 25 milligram tabs. So 1 tab per 25 milligrams. Lets me cancel, and then I bring over the 100 milligrams because it lets me cancel out those milligrams. Oh, sorry, the red's in the wrong spot. I'm in a different computer, so. But 100 tabs per 25 gives you 4 tabs. And the answer in your exam would be 4. All right, this is the unit of measure that's actually in your book. This is a huge topic. This is what I simplified for you in those other tablets. So in those other tables. So make sure you understand this is where I brought all that information from, was this. This is just another way of remembering the metric conversion. I give you a couple, however you want to use it. Okay, specifics. Gram is G or GM, okay? Not GRM, none of that. It's one of the two. It could be either one, Christy. Those are both accepted shorthand. Liter should be capital L, accepted shorthand. Not LIT, not LTR, capital L. These are all accepted as proper shorthand for calculations, and that's it. Lowercase letters for abbreviations, so milligrams would be mg, milliliters would be little m, capital L. cc, while you will hear it all over the place, it is no longer supposed to be accepted. It's supposed to be mLs, because that's what a cc is an ml. Convert fractions to decimals. If the answer is 0.5, it's 0.5. It's not 1/2. It's not 0.50. It's 0.5. You cannot, we have this in here, do not use trailing zero. So if the answer is 5, it's not 5.0. If you write 5.0 and the answer is 5, you're wrong. The reason that it's wrong is because if somebody writes that down and you saw 5.0, but I saw 50, I would have given somebody 10 times the dose because I didn't see that. So if it's just a whole number, you write 5. If it's 1.40, the answer is 1.4. If it's 0.9, it's 0.9 to actually get that information across. This is how you will write this, okay? And these rules will be right above every math question that is written for you on these exams. This is practice. Practice with dosage calculation. When you're practicing it, some places have different rounding rules than us. That's fine. The number that you get based on our rounding rules may be different on practice equations. But if you can get to the point where you actually get the answer before rounding that they gave, good. That means you know you could actually round for us. If the question asks for 22.5 as the answer and you rounded it to 23, but you got 22.5, then you know you would have had it right on our exam. So don't freak out if it's slightly off. This is our rounding rules. All right, conversion. Convert milligram to gram. So I've got 1,000 milligrams as a gram. 300 milligrams equals how many grams? I know you can do it in your head. Dimensional analysis. Dimensional analysis. Okay? Some people can do these in your head, and that's fine to start. But again, I'm trying to use simple ones to get us started in this. So my question is, it doesn't matter what the question is, how many grams? X grams. What do I have up there that matches grams? I have a conversion factor. I will not give you conversion factors in the actual exam, so you'll have to know them. I just wanted to write this in here so you saw it. So X grams, 1 gram over 1,000 grams, because that 1 gram matches the X grams, matches my suffixes. Now I need to cancel that milligrams, just like we've been doing. I pull something down, that 300, which will allow me to cancel my suffixes. I have nothing left on the right side of the equations for suffixes except for what I need, which is grams. That means I can multiply across and divide. The exam would be 0.3, not 0.3 grams. Other units of household measure: weights, volume, length, all ways that you would use them. As we already said, an ounce is 30 mils, right? Oh, let me back up. How do we know to put 300 on top? That's fine. Let's go back to it. Because whatever is on the bottom needs to be canceled on top. And I have 300 milligrams up here. So that means I can put 300 over 1. And that would let me cancel the milligrams and milligrams. Does that make sense? Okay. One. Could you put 1,000 over 1? You could, but then that wouldn't match the suffix on the left that I wanted. If I was looking for milligrams, I could absolutely have started with the switched across like that. Absolutely, if it would let me switch it. No, because then we'd have other things we'd have to worry about. But you could do things like that. Yes, it's about manipulating numbers. And as we go further in, you'll see what I mean and how to switch these things. I'm just trying to keep it consistent as we go forward. Desired measure always goes on top. Yes, so whatever is up here should match here because that's what you want. That's your desired end. Hey, look, the memorization tool. Wouldn't it, and see, and it wouldn't be 1 over 1,000 because, let's see, because making it into a fraction is 300 over 1, correct? And wouldn't it be 1 over 300 because making 300 into a fraction is 300 over 1? You could manipulate the fractions. Again, well, if you have this question as we go into other ones, I'll show you, but let's move forward in it. It's kind of hard to go into the hypotheticals without me putting it on these slides. But you'll see what I mean as we go forward. And if you have further questions, you can always ask me for more guidance on this when we're done. So 2.5 cups is how many mils? Okay, a couple different things on there. So let's get started with this. XMLs, right? What do I have in the equation that deals with mLs? Nothing. You have to know a conversion. So tell me, what's the conversion? Mils and cups. 240 mils in a cup. Absolutely. Right? So I have 240 mils, which is what I wanted. I have a cup on the bottom that needs to be canceled out. And up in the equation, I have 2.5 cups, 2.5 cups. I can cancel those cups. All I have left is mils on that side. Multiply and divide. That's how you convert with this. Order is augmentin 500 milligrams PO daily. Available is 250 milligrams per teaspoon. How many mils will you administer? The bottle of augmentin comes in 50 mils. Kathleen will go back after this one. Getting some answers now. Okay, so let's go through it. I'm looking for mils. How many mils? So I start with that, XMLs. What do I have up there that has mils in it? Yeah, 5 mils per 1 teaspoon. It's not up there, but you have to be able to put it in there, okay? That's a conversion factor. Again, you just have to know it. So I now have that, 5 mils to teaspoon, which means now I have something to work with. Up there, I had 250 milligrams per teaspoon, so just flipped it, 1 teaspoon up top so I can cancel the suffixes. Now, so far we've only done 2 steps. Now I have mils over milligrams left. I don't want mils over milligrams. I want mils. So I bring another thing down from the equation, that milligram that's up top, which allows me to cancel the milligrams. Now, I haven't done any multiplication or any division. I've just been canceling suffixes. All I should have left here is mils. I've canceled the teaspoons. I've canceled the milligrams. All I have left is mils. Good. Nothing else is left for me to pull from the equation. That bottle of augmentin, it's called a distractor. You will find these in certain questions where it's not necessary to have that, but they'll give it to you, and you have to realize that it's not necessary to use for calculations. So I will multiply across and divide to give me 10 mLs, or in the terms of the exam, it would be 10. Does that make sense? That's the next step up. Okay. And then I forgot who asked, but let me back up just for a second so you can see the answer to the last question. 600 mLs was the last question. How are we feeling? Good. Icky? Okay, good. Until that last one. That's okay. It's okay to be stressed now, make mistakes now, have problems now. It will require practice, a lot of practice. Your Ogden book has written exams that you can practice with, and you also have online questions that you can do. There's a lot of them online. So overwhelmingly. And that's Jonathan, that's okay. Just take your time. This is why I'm introducing it to you. You all have access to this PowerPoint, correct? Kara, and that is, I can go slower with this thing. It's just you will have access to this recording. So when you take this home and start looking at it, you can pause me. You can go through it and do it at your pace that way. I just don't want to, we could really spend a lot of time in this. I just want you to have a moment to try and set it up and then go forward with it. The online questions in the book, they're in that Sure Path for Ogden. So you'll have to go to the Sure Path section. That's what the book, the code inside of the book gave you. Did elixir elude you to needing a liquid, not a solid? All I did was look at what I needed and what I could start canceling. That's how you do dosage calculations. Because sometimes you're just putting things in there. It's like cancel, cancel, cancel. And as soon as you get to it, you've got it. That's all you have to worry about. Just think of unit as measures as things to cancel, whether they be units or milliequivalents, milliliters, milligrams. You can write the units of measure during the calculation on a scratch piece. Yes, you will be given a scratch piece of paper during exams that you can write on. You'll have to write your name on it and hand it in during the exam or after the exam is completed. All right. The order states Cantrex of 200 milligrams IM Q6 hours. That's in the muscle every 6 hours. Cantrex is available 0.5 grams per 2 mils. How many milliliters will you administer? a few more minutes, give it a little bit more time. Okay, let's go ahead and go through this. How many milliliters will the nurse administer? So we always start with our X mLs. That's what we're looking for is mLs. So what do I have up there? 2 mils per 0.5 grams. I don't have grams though, right? So how do I get to, what do I do now? Absolutely, I've got to convert 1 gram per 1,000 milligrams. Allows me to cancel the grams. I'm not even looking at the numbers. I'm just pulling them in at this point. Allows me to cancel the grams. So now I have milliliters over milligrams. I don't want milligrams. I just want milliliters. So I go back up there. What do I have? I have that 200 milligrams left, which allows me to put it over the number 1. Canceling out the milligrams. I haven't done any math. It's just looking at putting everything in and canceling all the suffixes. When I'm done, I can multiply across and then divide. .8. You guys want a quick break? Okay, let's take 10 minutes. So let me stop and pause real quick. Okay, let's go back into our math. You share the screen. You will have plenty of time to ask questions today. We've already done this question, so I'll move forward. Okay, I can ask you to do this. I can ask you to read a bottle label and do your calculations from it, because this is more real world than writing this, that, and this down. More likely you'll have something like this and have to figure out what's going on. So I have this up top. Order, atropine, 1 milligram. Now, what I have up top is what I have. I'm going to give you all a moment to look at it and see if you can do the equation. Okay. Give you guys just another moment. All right, let's go through this. So how many mils? Well, I'm going to start with my mils, right? I don't have much up there, but I have a lot of different numbers. If you look here, it says 0.4 milligrams per mil. It gives it to you. Every bottle should have this in some way. Sometimes it may give you a bigger number over like 250 mils or something like that, but every bottle should have something like this. So I pulled it down. 1 mil, which matches the mil, and mil match it, to 0.4 milligrams. I have the 1 milligram already, which allows me to cancel the suffixes and give me 2.5 mils. The trick is that the answer is also right there. I asked you for 1 mil, or I gave you 1 milligram, and the bottle told you. If you can do either of these, most of the time, if I give you a bottle like this, it's not going to have the answer on the bottle. I don't like making it that easy. I want you to calculate. But if you could catch that, that's good. That means you're looking at the entire problem, which is a good catch. But I also want you to be able to do it the way down here, because if you show on that bottle, I might still be like, can you calculate it for really quick for me, because I don't feel comfortable with that. Yeah, that 1.0 milligram is a trailing number. I'm going after whoever made this label. I'm going to have to find them, and I'm going to take them out. That's all that's going to happen. Okay, teach them some math. Weights are critical in providing care. This is the beginning and the only time this lecture I'll be really pushing into weights. You need to know how to do this, because when I teach you dosage calculation at the very end of this month, the second dosage calculation on 9/22, you will have weight-based things in it. So you need to know how to do this just right off the bat. That's why I'm introducing it. So convert 120 pounds to kilograms. Okay. Just like anything else. X kilograms. I don't have anything for kilograms up there, so 1 kilogram is 2.2 pounds. I can pull the pounds in now. Cancel them out. All I have left is kilograms. There's no other suffixes, so I know I'm done. 54.5 kilograms. With which number goes on top right when you start, or when you actually pull the number in? So when you first start, the first thing you always do is say, what do I looking for? I'm looking for here specifically kilograms. Weight has its own rounding, Kimberly, and I'll show you in a minute. Specifically kilograms. So whatever this is should be the top thing here. So this says we already had this conversion of 2.2 pounds of 1 kilogram. We had to just know it. Okay. So by putting it in there, I'm saying, okay, this is 1 kilogram per 2.2 pounds. These match. I can now work on the equation. Got it. Okay, good. The unit of measure for I and O's. So, and as I said, there is something you need to know about with the weight, which I'll show you at the end of this, but being able to calculate that appropriately. The unit of measure for I and O is typically milliliters. So when you're going to be doing this from almost day one in clinicals, you need to know how to measure what the intake is of someone and the output is of someone, be able to put them together and figure out what their total is. So I&O measures may require conversions between multiple things. You could have, an 8 ounce, think of cranberry juice, and then you could have something like, you could have a lot of different things for it. So I'm going to give you some examples. Or 3 tablespoons of broth, yada, yada. So this is a much bigger version of your dosage calculation stuff. I have a question of calculate the intake. I have a list of things here. So because this is your first one, I'll walk you through it. So I'm looking for the intake. Always start with this to help you out. First off, with intake and output, the question may ask for intake, it may ask for output only, or it may ask for both. So I'm asking for intake. 4 cups of water is intake. Broth is intake. I hope urine is not intake. Don't use that in your dosage, in your dosing. A liter of normal saline, intake. Wound drainage. That's output. Okay? So all I'm going to do is use the cup of water, the broth, and the saline to calculate the intake. The rest of it, distractors. So I'll let you guys try and do this. Give you a moment. Okay. And again, this recording will be there for you all, as well as you already have this PowerPoint. So you guys can feel free to work your way through these without having to listen to everything. You can pause it. So we'll start with the top. 4 times 240 mils is 960 milliliters. $500 mils of broth we've already done for us. 1,000 mils of normal saline. 2460 mLs total intake. I didn't ask for a difference. I didn't ask for intake and output. I said, what is the intake of the patient? Okay? Don't worry. Let's do another one. Yeah, it will always be in mLs. That's how you measure it. So I'm looking at the output. Go from there. Okay? So again, we're looking at output. 50 mils an hour for 12 hours. That's IV fusion. That's intake. I don't care. 8 ounces of ice chips, intake. Don't care. 600 mils of urine in the Foley. Please let that be output. 200 mils of JP drainage. 400 mils of loose stool. Those are all output. 3 8-ounce Cokes, intake. 2 8-ounce cranberry juices, intake. So 600, 200, and 400. That's it. Gives you a total of 1,200 mils. Don't worry. You can do both now. I'll let you guys do this. I'll give you a few more. Give you a moment to do this one. Okay, looks like we're starting to get it. Charlotte, flushes are the things that we use to give medications after to kind of flush the medicine in, or to use it to dilute some medicines. Okay, let's go through this. So if I can give any advice when you have a question that says intake and output, make a little chart on your little scratch paper like I have right here, because it will help you be able to pull things apart, okay? rather than having to rewrite everything. So 2 times 12 popsicles, intake. 2 12-ounce popsicles, and you multiply it by 30 because each ounce is a mil. Each ounce is 30 mils, excuse me. Gives you 720 mils. Go to the next one. 125 mils an hour of IV fluids for 10 hours. I just said, okay, it's 125 times 10, which tells me how much intake I get with that. 1,250 mils. I have stool. We already knew that stool was output. 2 16-ounce apple juices, again, 2 times 16, and then times 30, so we get our mils out of it, 960 mils. That urine, once again, please don't let it be drinking it. It's your output. And then those flushes. Those flushes are just little syringes that we use to push medicine or other things into it. So we're flushing it with just 5 of them. So that gives us 50 mils. And now if you set it up on their note card the way I just showed you, you could just add one side versus the other. So your intake when adding all together would be 2980, output 1810. How is that? Intake and output can be on any exam until you graduate. So I want to make sure you're introduced to it now. Flushes. When you go to the clinic, when you go into your clinicals, they'll show you specifically a flush. It's a 10 millimeter syringe that has 10 mils of normal saline in it. And then you can flush it into there. Again, when you give a medication IV, you can use it to make sure that all the medicine gets into them. You can also use it to place IVs. You'll see them. They are going to be in your pockets for the rest of your life as you're working. Nave, one more. I'll be happy to give more. I'll tell you to go practice more intake and outputs. There's lots of them all over. I think that was my last one for intake and output, but you will have more experience with those. And they do have intake and output in your Ogden book as well. I think I still just have to commit the fluid ounce to milliliters and such. Yes, you still have to practice. You're just practicing those. That's why we do it. Figure out what you need to do now, and we'll keep going from there. Okay. Military time conversion. If you don't know what these are, you need to recognize them. It's a 24-hour clock. That's all this is. So if it's 10:30 in the evening, it's 22:30. If it's midnight, it's quad zeros. At 1 a.m., it's 0100. Noon is 1200. 11 p.m. is 2300. That's how you do this, okay? It's just one of those ones you'll just have to commit these to memory. When I was in nursing school, I knew what these were, but I never learned them. So I just turned everything that I owned into military time, and it made it a lot easier to learn it. Yep, exactly. Switch your phone to military time and start practicing. You can also add 12s to afternoon times to help with that. Absolutely. You should always base your stuff on military time when charting, especially in hospitals. Some places say you don't need to, but most hospitals now are military time. And especially if you go into night shift, you best be good at it because everything's going to be switching over. Everything will switch over on your shift. So, also notice there is no colon. If I ask you for a timed infusion, or if I just ask you in general, what time is this based on how many hours you've had to spend, because I can do that, and you'll get experience with that later on. But if I say, well, this drug infused for 4 hours, let's say it started at 0400, and the drug infused for 4 hours. Well, what time would that be? The infusion be completed then? 0800. If you write 08:00, you're wrong, because that's not military time. There is no colon. These are the rounding rules. You do not have to memorize them. You do not have to memorize them. Can I say it again? Do not try and memorize these. You will have them above every single dosage calculation question. When you get them, they'll be there for you to read. So when you go through all the calculations, it's there for you. If you look on that second set of rounding rules, under rounding rules, convert all weights from pounds to kilograms. Round weights to the nearest hundredths for calculations. prior to completing dosage calculation. So when I did mine, I showed you 55.4, it would be 55.45. I pulled that out. I got to fix that. But you'll need to know to make sure that you round that to the nearest hundredth, which is 2 decimal points after, before you start doing dosage calculation, because you can be wrong with it. If you try and do it, just keep going. Look at this big old disclaimer. Only write the unit of measure if you're taking a handwritten exam. What that means is if you come in, for some reason, computers are down and we have to print exams, that's the only time you're allowed to write the unit of measure at the end. Other than that, nothing. You should be, hopefully you'll never have a written exam and everything will be like that. But we have that caveat, just so you know. And we would remind you, if it's a written exam, about that rule. You're only to put a number on the test, not the unit of measure. If you put the unit of measure, I'm going to say it again, you won't get credit for the question. If you put 2 milliliters, it's wrong. You must follow the orders that we're giving you. Read your rounding rules for every question, and you must follow the order as written. Don't use fractions. These are examples of things. So like 0.25 is not 1/4. It's not 0.25. It's not 0.250. It's not 0.250. It's 0.25. Questions? I know you guys are freaking out, so stop there. Let me